great to be here this afternoon. This has been such a wonderful event. I just want to take a few minutes to talk to you about how it became really the product of a wonderful program, a wonderful organization, Israel & Co., who really spends time locating MBA professors, particularly in entrepreneurship and innovation, and gives them a familiarity trip that, at the end of the day, puts them in a position to advocate for Israeli-based programming at U.S.-based business schools. So for my 10 minutes, I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and how I got involved with Israel & Co. initially. I'll take a little bit of time and talk about Israel & Co. I should say that Gil Galanos, Gil, where are you? You should be in the room here. Gil Galanos is the CEO, and there are several people from Israel & Co. here, and so you should definitely identify him if you have further questions. I want to talk a little bit about what I've done since my familiarity trip there, which was really a transformative experience for me in lots of different ways. And I also want to tell you kind of things that I'm hoping to do that I haven't accomplished yet based on my exposure to Israel. So I arrived at the University of Pittsburgh fresh out of my PhD program in 2012. And I was really tasked with spicing up the entrepreneurship curriculum there. It's pretty much been a business planning contest kind of thing. I'm sure anybody here that from the venture firms or universities and entrepreneurs are familiar with that format. And people were tired of it. They wanted different kinds of programming, and they wanted new areas of focus. So I came in, and 3 months on my job there, I got a very interesting email. That email came from Israel & Co. And Israel & Co. had identified me as a professor of entrepreneurship at a major American business school as somebody that they wanted to take in the format of a familiarity trip, a week-long trip with other U.S.-based professors at major business schools. Send us over there and show us all of the great richness about the Israeli culture, and particularly the innovation cluster. Right? We did learn some things about religion, and most people, most Americans, I'd say even myself, are usually thinking about Israel within the religious studies kind of context. Right? But this was an opportunity to learn about Israel in a different way. And really to get plugged into what's been resonating here all day, which is the startup nation narrative of Israel. Right? And why it's so important globally, and why it's so inspiring regardless of what community you're a part of. So this is a picture of us at Masada. So there were about 20 faculty members that made this trip. And this was really important because, or at least important for me, and I'll really talk about this more as far as my own development. One of the things that we've been trying to do, at least in Pittsburgh, is to figure out how we can position our school to be connected, to become a bigger cluster, and to do that by being connected to other global clusters. Right? One of the things that's really important for Pittsburgh and Israel is the fact that the Western Pennsylvania and the University of Pittsburgh in particular are incredibly strong in energy, in life sciences, and information technology. Three industries that are absolutely booming on the innovation side of Israel. So there was immediate interest in trying to get a faculty member out there to forge some sorts of relationships, because there might be the possibility of Pittsburgh becoming, along with obviously Boston, Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia, another conduit by which Israeli technology and even Israeli companies make their way into the American business market. And so we went there and we visited, I think the format for the familiarity trips was pretty standard. We visited venture capitalist firms like JVP. We visited the old city. Obviously, we took in some of the cultural and historical sites. We also visited Intel and had a chance to see things like manufacturing the next generation chips. And so it was important for me to be able to see American companies, American corporations. Like, I'm from Seattle. Obviously, I'm familiar with Microsoft, but to be able to see some of the most important R&D for those American-based companies happening in Israel specifically. So that exposure was big for me. Another thing happened though while I was there. This was November of 2012. On the second day of the trip, there was an escalation, a military escalation, between Hamas and the IDF. So you can imagine, I can imagine actually Gil, he's there, he's got us there, he's selling us on Israel as a place to bring your students and do your research, right? And all of a sudden you've got 20, 25 American faculty members right? Hearing the sirens go off in Tel Aviv. And then the next day we go to Jerusalem, and the sirens go off there too. So let's just say we got the real tour. Right? We got the real tour. But this ended up being really important. I know while this was happening, all my family back in the U.S. were like, get home now, right? Based on the messages that they were getting through CNN and the like, right? And we went along our business. We were obviously aware of what was going on, but we just kept booking our meetings and people acted normal. This became important once I came back because now I'm at the University of Pittsburgh trying to sell Israel as our next opportunity, right, as a university, to forge bigger and stronger and bolder relationships. And the first, you can think of it even almost on a stereotypical level, something I would have suffered from. But the first thing they want to think about is military conflict, they want to think about safety, these things. So it was a hard sell. But having a faculty member who actually, ironically, had experienced the safety of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and Haifa while I was there, and was a substantial supporting document on safety of Israel and go to, right? It was easier for me to make them do this, which was the first time they're allowing a faculty member to take students to an area where the State Department actually has a country alert on. It's not a standard practice. So there's lots of eyes on this trip, and I can tell you that my MBA students are absolutely fascinated by the context that we're going to get into. So here we are at Masada, which really made up the last day of our trip before heading out to Jerusalem, or headed out to the airport, excuse me. Since I returned from that trip, there's been a few developments. One is I was able to return almost immediately in March, which was very important. On April 1st, many of you who have anything to do with the energy sector know that the natural gas field from Tamar was pumping in for the first time. I anticipated that that was going to be an important moment for geopolitics in the Middle East. And I wanted to be the first American business school, boots on the ground, studying that moment. So I went, and here's the 3 students that I made that research trip with, obviously in front of the Western Wall. So I was back there, and I was proud to be the American business school that was paying attention to that particular dynamic. That's usually happening in public policy schools or other things. And that ended up helping me sell to make the bigger trip that we're going to be making March 7th to 14th. That will include engineering students and law students. One thing I'll also say about this is these students are all international. One of the things that the CATS, the Pitt Business School, prides itself on is having a very international student body. We find that the American business student is a little harder to sell, probably because of different cultural background, including myself, that they bring to it. But the international students jump on the opportunity to go to Israel. So they were very strong advocates for me within the building and saying, this is exactly where our students need to be focusing. And if I could just take a moment and say, the thing I want to do next is, I was just at Berkeley being trained on the Lean Launchpad method. Anybody dealing with business model development knows what the lean canvas looks like, what the business model canvas looks like. So my goal now is to really be more collaborative. And rather than just having CATS MBAs going over to Israel, what I'm hoping to do next year is to have a collaborative approach. We have 4 or 5 teams, 3 engineering students from Israel, 3 MBA students, one working on the tech side, one half of the team working on the tech side, the other half working on the U.S. market, right, and commercialization side. So I'm hoping to develop out a course that will specifically do a 10-week collaborative, teamwork-based commercialization learning experience. And the last thing I'll say is the familiarity trip, I'll say, was really a transformative experience. I think that's a very important thing. I mean, as somebody who's not from the community, somebody who had all of the cultural biases that are normally inculcated from the media about Israel and its role in the Middle East, this was a very transformative experience. And I would go further and just to say that as much as it's important for me, you know where this is, as much as it's been important for me to have this exposure and to learn all the intellectual reasons for engaging Israel and to hear from all the smart people and being in a room with all smart people just like yourself that are engaged, that care, that bring your expertise and domain knowledge. Right? As much as that's important, I also think maybe even a bigger piece is the fact that this is a hearts and minds, right? And that people are actually coming back and changed. And I have to say, I came back from Israel with brothers and sisters, some of whom are in the room, the Israel and Co. staff. And so that was really important. And so even though this talk ostensibly was about my research, I definitely want to say that what Israel and Co. is doing is really providing a means for changing lots of hearts and minds in business schools today. Thank you.